Okay, welcome back to Project Talbot. Now, I have topped up the coolant, which you can just about see in there. And that appears to be holding its level, I think. I did have to nip up one of the front hose clips down there, but it appears to be holding, especially on this top hose, which I was a bit dubious about. But that appears to be holding water, so I'll leave that for a while just to monitor the level. Obviously it's one thing holding water when it's cold, another when the water's or coolant is warmed up, but one step at a time. So while I'm leaving that, I'm just having a look at the fuel supply side. Here's the mechanical AC pump that sits conveniently here, nice and accessible. So I whizzed off the top cover, which is held on with a single bolt, and remove this filter screen, which actually, if you hold it up, is nice and clean, possibly fairly new even, so that's good news. But when I did have a pier in here, there's a lot of claggy old rubbish. I've plugged up there because the fuel comes in here, through the filter, and goes down there and out the outlet pipe. So I've just blocked that up temporarily so that while I'm disturbing all this muck in here, it doesn't get drawn through the pump itself. While I'm at it, I'll just draw out any muck that's around the plug holes from when I did the thermostat housing in the last video, which you may or may not have seen. There are several videos about the Talbot now on the channel, so if you've not seen those and where it came from, etc, etc, it might be worth having a look at those too if you like the pre-war car stuff. But yes, clean this out next. If you actually, fortunately it's got a manual priming lever on the pump, so you can draw the fuel up. So I think what I'll do, I'll clean this out, refit everything, see if I can find something just to go into the inlet here that allows me to run it off a tin of petrol, and it can run for a decent amount of time, and I can see if the cooling system's working or not. I don't yet trust the fuel tank in the car, I haven't looked at that at all yet, so I don't want to risk putting fuel in there and drawing up all sorts of rubbish. So the next step is just to rig up a temporary feed into the pump that can then feed the carburetor and let it run for a decent length of time without having to pour fuel into a funnel straight into the carburetor, which is never very satisfactory. Okay, well that's looking a bit healthier in there now, so all I need to do now is take off my little plug, and I've gone and cleaned up the cover that goes on here. I've just been looking to see if I can find a new cork gasket to go on there. So I stroll over here. I've been having a route through the box of fuel pump goodies. Been through these old stock bits and bobs. This is an old Ford packet, AC fuel pumps, various different types of kit, and in this anonymous box I found the correct cork gasket to go in there. So I've cleaned that up a little bit just to make it look a bit more presentable, and all I need to do is peel out the old cork gasket that's in there, and I can pop in that one and then reassemble it and start thinking about how to connect up a fuel feed into the pump and then connect the pipe from the pump to the carburetor. So I think I'll do this next while I think of it and tidy up, because it's all a bit chaotic otherwise. I don't know why I keep a lot of this junk, but sometimes it's handy just to have things to route through, if only to pinch connectors and stuff like that. So I guess it's worthwhile. Of course, the thing to remember with all these old cars is they were designed to be worked on, but they were never designed to last this length of time. You know, being optimistic, a car that was built in the 30s would probably be expected to last into the 1950s, but probably not much beyond that. So the fact that any of these old cars survive is pretty amazing, really. And of course, if it wasn't the years that were going to take these cars off the road, it could be corrosion, because cars rust usually if they're made of steel, so they rust. And certainly in the UK at least, in the early 1960s, we had the introduction of the, it's windy out there, we had the introduction of the 10-year test, which was basically the MOT. To begin with, it was for cars that were 10 years old or over, and that was a roadworthiness test, and that saw a lot of pre-war cars being scrapped. It would have been great to have been around in those days, especially when you could go rooting around scrapyards, because they would have been full of amazing vehicles, many of which could have been bought for very little money. So it would have been a great time to be around, but alas, I missed out on that, so that's not going to happen. But yeah, that any of these pre-war cars survived. I mean, they survived the war, they survived people running them probably on a shoestring during the rationing years of the late 40s and early 50s. They survived fashion changes, they survived corrosion, accident damage, like I say, the 10-year test, changing fashions, because by the early 1960s running a pre-war car, unless you were slightly eccentric, was not really the done thing, and any car that still ran would have been available for just a few pounds really, if you look in the old magazines. So the fact that any of these survive is truly amazing, and I've always said that any car that gets to sort of 50 or 60, 70, 80 years of age has at some point in time been in the hands of either a hoarder or at least someone who couldn't bear to get rid of the car, because by rights any car, once it stops being used, it's either sold on, and once it becomes a bit long in the tooth, it just gets scrapped and chucked away. So I think it's amazing that any of these things survive, to be honest, but fortunately they do. Unfortunately, there are people out there with the skills to restore these things properly, and it allows us to carry on spending our weekends tinkering and hopefully taking these things to shows. So I think that's more or less ready. I'll just clean this out a little bit better, but the seat where the cork gasket fits is okay now, so that's pretty much ready to go back on once I've given that a quick clean out, and then I can start looking at connecting the fuel pipe up. You might also notice that I've removed these god-awful aftermarket indicators, these flashing indicators that were on here. They were just horrible 60s cheap nasty things, horrible plastic lenses, etc., one of which was broken, so it's no great loss by taking these off, and it looks a lot better for it. The only downside is you've got 3 holes on each side which will need plugging up with something, but compared to that I prefer even to see that, so it just makes it look a little bit better. Oh, what's going on down here then? A bit more carburetor cleaning. So what are you up to?
Cleaning up this carburetor.
Yeah, what are you?
Trying to get it to move properly.
Trying to free it up. Is it going in? It needs to be a tight fit, but a smooth. Yeah. Sometimes they get corroded inside the dashpot and everything.
I'll have to have a look inside.
Have another go at it. So what else have you been up to?
I uploaded another vid today to my own channel.
Oh, yes. So what's this one about?
The latest vid is about Land Rover, but there are other things on there.
Yeah. Go on, what's it called? A free advert, free plug.
Car Traction.
Car Traction, all one word.
Subscribe to Car Traction.
Is that right? Once upon a time you used to support my channel by putting videos on there, but not anymore. Oh, I'll leave you to it then. I'll go and carry on with my fuel system.
Okay.
Okay, to the back end now, petrol tank time. Let's go and have a look, see what we can find under here. Right, one petrol tank, one drain plug, whereas normally you have a nice big nut drain plug that you can get a spanner on. This has got a square in it, so I need to go and find something that will fit in there and hopefully drain this off. I'm not sure that exhaust is going to do much good over there. Just Probably not very effective, but never mind. Right, let's go and find something to fit that. Right, so I've had a bit of a route through the spanner collection, carburetor continuing to be cleaned, and I found these two rear axle tools. Now this one's got various square ends on it, but nothing suitable. But this old Melco brand has a square on the end of there, which is just about right. So all you have to do is whiz that under the fuel tank, 1/4 inch spanner, Whitworth, put that on there, it will go, and yeah, that should enable me to drain the tank off. So let's go and see if it'll actually work in practice. Okay, quick update. It appears to hold coolant. I mixed up a not too strong mix of antifreeze and put it all in. It didn't leak, but I fired it up again today, and I mean it's gone hard again now. But as soon as the thermostat opened and the hot water and went into here, it just collapsed internally, as you can see. So that's not much use to anyone really. So what I might have to do may be that if I can just use part of this to get the angle off the top of the head, and then put a reducer piece, a bit like you might use on an exhaust system. So maybe a piece of metal tubing that reduces down from somewhere around this diameter to the diameter up there, and then just put a short piece in there. That might just work. It just depends whether, if I use part of this, will it be good enough. I could really do with an angled piece of this, which is 70mm internal. Fire up the computer and see what we can find for that. Right, just a few days later. Now, as I mentioned, this hose, as soon as I ran some hot water through it, it collapsed. It's gone hard again now, but as soon as the hot water hit it, it just went all floppy and not very inspiring. So I've been buying a few bits and bobs. Now, the top of the thermostat housing, it's approximately, in modern money, 70mm across. So I was able to get this piece of trunking made out of silicone. I think it's for the rally people. So if I cut that down, that should be able to go on there, something like that, and that's 70mm at that end. But the radiator end up there is not 70mm, it's about 50. So I bought a reducer, and the theory is if I put this on here, cut it down, so I've got the 45-degree angle here, and put this reducer in, which happens to fit in there, and this is 50, and that's about 50 as well at that end. So I should be able to find just any old piece of rubber hose just to join that to the radiator, and in theory that'll work. And this isn't going to collapse anytime soon, unlike the old part. It's a little bit shiny, it's got the maker's name on it, so I'll have to sand that off maybe. And if I just sand the whole thing, if it'll just dull down a little bit. So that's the next plan. Take this hose off again and see if I can make something up with these pieces here. So let's give that a whirl. Now that it's off, you can see exactly what's happened. It's just collapsed internally. Any integrity or strength in that hose, the rubber hose, it's just gone for a Burton. So that was never going to work. In fact, now it's all compressed in. It just shows what a bad state the hose was in. So that was never going to be work. I didn't realise it was that bad, but it was. So the next thing to do is to see if that modern bit of hose will actually fit on the top of there. Okay, time for a quick update. I managed to use the pieces that I bought off the internet, and I've made up something approximating a top hose. I was able to use the silicone 40 angle for this, and the reducer in there, and then just a piece of this fairly horrible universal flexible pipe just to finish it all off. I did have a slight problem in that I overwound this particular clip here, which had the effect of crushing slightly this reducer, because it's only made of fairly lightweight stuff. So I had to take it all apart again, knock out the ding, refit it, and hope that it stays mainly dry. Whether that'll work or not, I don't know. But I've poured water in here and it hasn't seeped out. But obviously when it's all heated up and being pumped around by the pump, it may be a different story, but it should be more or less watertight, at least enough for testing purposes. So I've been adding coolant in here. Obviously the thermostat's closed at the moment, so it's been going down here, down to the bottom and filling the engine from the bottom upwards basically. So there's obviously still more to add in, but it's got a fair amount of coolant in there now. So I'm fairly confident that I can fire it up and have it running long enough just to see how the gears work, see if the clutch works and so on. So the next thing I want to do is plumb in a fuel supply. Now I've worked out a way of making up a temporary supply to go into the inlet side of the pump using this fitting here. So I'll sort that out, see if I can prime it up using the hand priming lever on the bottom of the pump there, see if it'll prime up the carburettor okay, and if it will, then I'll have a go at starting it up again and try see if it'll move under its own power or not. If it will, I'll move the car outside and carry on topping up the coolant, because once the thermostat opens and everything's flowing, hopefully fairly freely, then I can just keep adding it in until the level's correct and stays correct. Whereas at the moment I'm pouring it in and it's sort of burping itself down, and then I have to keep pouring a bit more in and so on. So it'll speed it up if the thermostat's open, but that'll obviously happen only once it's warmed through again. So really the next thing to do is sort out this fuel feed, see if it'll work, see if I can put a tin on the front of the car and just run a pipe up to here, prime it through, pull it through to the carburettor, and then take it from there, I think. Also had a little Dodge running today. It hasn't run for a few months, so I thought I'd give it a quick run down the road just to make sure everything's working okay. This lot are fairly noisy today. Well, there's a temporary fuel supply, the pipe, plumbed in to the inlet of the AC mechanical pump. Now the outlet goes over here to the carburettor, it isn't connected, so I just want to see if the priming lever will actually do its job or not. Let's give this a go. Obviously the fuel pump's totally empty, so I need to see if it's actually going to pull the fuel through or not. It sounds healthy, I can hear it squelching at the other end, but I just need to see if any fluid comes through. Probably be a little difficult to tell from this side. Let's keep going. There we go. So fuel's getting through, so I can connect that union up now straight into the carburettor, and it's got a fuel supply from the green can down there, so that's handy. So let's get that sorted out now. Right, well, I can whiz off the gravity fuel feed now. Let's get that off. There's definitely fuel in this pipe, so oops, it's all coming down, so it's handy. Let's get this out of here. Just gently tighten that up. Try and not cross thread it. Let's just nip that up. It's only brass, so nothing too heroic. Right, let's see if I can reach that priming lever and see if we can just prime up the float chamber from this side without having to close the bonnet again. I can hear it coming up. Sounds like it's doing its job. I hope. It should be doing. I think that's pretty much full now. I can't hear it filling up anymore, so that's good. I'm not entirely convinced that this choke arrangement's working properly. Last time I ran it, I actually just put a long big screwdriver in here just so that the choke didn't fully come on, because this is thermostatically controlled from in here, and I'm not entirely sure that that works, but until it's fully up to temperature I won't really know, so I'll override that for now. And I'll just sort of give it 3/4 choke, and that should be enough for it to start. So I'll try that afterwards. I'll have a quick tidy up and then see if it'll start. If it starts, try the gears, see if it'll move under its own steam. So that should be quite exciting, well, for me anyway. Okay, well, I think she's ready. Fuel system is plumbed in. The slightly non-factory fuel tank arrangements are in place. This is all connected up again. This is my makeshift choke arrangement, so all I need to do now is find the battery and give it a whirl, see if it'll start, and then see if it'll move. So that should be good. Right, let's see if it'll start. It's not on the best battery, but it's on the second best battery. And then we'll see if the gears do anything. Clutch gears, see if it'll move. Okay, well, it's the next day, so a quick update. It still doesn't want to start, even with freshly charged batteries. I'm not entirely convinced the fuel supply is working correctly, so I've reverted to a gravity feed again, but it still wouldn't go. I checked the ignition points, which are over on the other side there, and there was no spark at the points. So I took them off and gave them a thorough clean up. Put them back on, and while there is sparkage in the vicinity of the points, when you put a screwdriver across you do get sparking, but not, crucially, no sparking across the points themselves. So I'm going to have a ferret through a box of new old stock ignition point sets and condensers and so on, and see if I've got anything to match these that I can install. I mean, I did give them a fairly serious filing back, so I thought they would have worked, but obviously not. So take them off and let's go and have a look in the box and see if we can find something suitable to take their place, because I only ran it up a couple of weeks ago and it started fairly easily, so I'm surprised it's gone off the boil again. But until I get a spark at the points and then a spark at the plugs, nothing much is going to happen. I think the fuel side will be okay, but again, let's get the ignition side sorted first. Okay, we made the start having a route through here just to see if I've got any points that will fit. Now, the third box I tried, someone's written Ford 100E on it, and the base plate part is the same, but this part is not. This curves around and mounts on a pin there. This one is designed where the connection comes in through the side of the distributor, which is a shame. So I've got a new one of those. I think it's certainly very, very close, but the other half won't work, so the search continues. Now working on the principle that the older the box, the older the car that the parts will suit. So I just had a look in this one, and there are some they're a bit rusty, but I think they are new old stock, and that one is a match for that. Just about see that. And this one is a match for that. If you can see that. Well, after a lot of faffing around with ignition parts, I think she's running off the tin now. So next thing to try, if it keeps running, is I'll move this out and then we'll try gears, clutch, not in that order, and then just see if it'll actually move under its own steam, and if it will, move it outside and keep an eye on the coolant and see if that top hose repair actually holds up. So let's have a bit of a move around, I think. Well, we've established that it's running off the fuel cans, so the pump appears to work through to the carburetor. I spent a lot of time yesterday fiddling around with different sets of points. It appears to work now, so let's see if it'll start, and importantly, let's see if it'll drive for the first time since. There we are, so let's clamber on board. I'm flying solo at the moment. Right. Okay, ignition on. Give it a couple of pumps on the throttle. That just sprays a drop of fuel down in the carburetor. Oil pressure up. Like I say, I haven't tried driving this at all yet, so we'll try the clutch pedal. Goes a very long way down. Let's try a gear. Right, she's in gear. Let's just carefully come off the clutch and see. Long way up on the clutch. Trying, make sure there's no handbrake on. I think the tyres are a bit square. Naturally the battery runs out at the important moment, so back into first gear. First time she's driven since 1976. Still got oil pressure. Just keep an eye on things. Need to keep an eye on the temperature now. All this was pre-lubricated. I went around all this before, the fan assembly as well. I'll just keep away from that because I'm a bit dubious about flying fans. So really, I just want it to warm up until such time as the thermostat opens, which I tested in the pan of water in an earlier video. And then see where we go from there. Obviously I've not really looked at any of the settings on the timing a carburettor, etc. I've kind of left things just as they were. She doesn't sound too upset. It's nice to see it outside again. I think what I'll do, I'll go and fetch the can of fresh antifreeze, and I'll just keep an eye on the water level, so as soon as the thermostat opens I can start topping it up, and then just keep an eye on this repaired upper hose, which doesn't look the prettiest, but given that I don't think there are any new ones around, this is probably as good as it's going to be for the time being. But she sounds quite healthy, oil pressure staying up. Let's try the lamps again. Got rear lamps. Be on the road next week. Maybe not. Right, I think I'll switch it off and then go and fetch the antifreeze. Just a bit of old oil and WD-40 burning off there, nothing too alarming. Obviously we'll keep an eye on things just in case, because you never quite know. But you'll notice this bright red lead. I noticed that the connection on this end, when I was faffing around yesterday with the ignition, I put another coil on various sets of points, and I noticed that the original lead on here was breaking up at this end, so I just made up a quick lead just to ensure that connection was good. Basically, it doesn't look pretty. I did have some braided cable, but the copper wire inside was too big to fit inside the connectors that I was using, so I just used this bit of red for now. But again, it's really just to prove the concept of whether it runs and drives. I'm not too worried about details at the moment. That can all follow afterwards. So let's go and find the antifreeze. So it should start again. I'd rather run it several times for briefer periods than one long run, just while things get used to running again. So can't beat a nice straight 6. Let's check for any leaks underneath. to take the opportunity to clean it up a little bit in here. I've not done it since it arrived, but I did notice this lovely old floor mat which has been preserved under this horrible old carpet, so that can stay hiding under there for now. But yeah, I just wanted to get the car so that I could drive it in and out of the garage as well as testing it, but it just made it a lot easier than pushing it, and it's a lot easier to work on it when it's outside than poked up in the garage. I overfilled it a little bit there, but it won't do any harm. It's just starting to feel a little bit warm now. Just keeping a very close eye on that fan. Need to keep a close eye on the level of fuel in this tin as well, because I imagine it probably uses a fair bit of fuel. Well, 3.2 litre straight 6 isn't going to be the most frugal of cars, but never mind. It's just great to hear it running and see it running outside, and it got here under its own steam. Because if you watch one of the last videos, when I put it in the garage I had to push it, and it's a heavy old thing to push, so I really didn't want to go through that again. But at least if it's on the button more or less, it just makes life a whole lot easier. Ideally I'll drain the tank, blow the line through, which is there, and it'll run from fuel in the tank. I did try draining off the tank, but some genius has put a circular brass plug on the drain as a drain plug on the tank, and there's no way that's moving. It's very shallow and it's circular, and it's just got a very small square inside it, and there's just no way that's coming off without taking the tank off and faffing around. So I'm going to try draining the tank out via the filler neck and just see how that works, and maybe have to rig up a temporary fuel pump arrangement just to pull up any muck into a tin until it runs clear, or it's emptied basically. Then I can sort of blow through and put some fresh fuel in, so I might have to do something like that. But for now it can run off as tin on the front. Oil pressure's still holding up. Water temperature's coming up on the gauge, 70, just low 70s. Loud, soft. I probably shouldn't do that today, but never mind. I've been intrigued to find out. At the moment I've got the screwdriver in the carburetor just to keep partial choke on. Oops. I've been intrigued to see if the thermostatically controlled choke arrangement actually works or not. But one thing at a time. Right, this is warming up a bit more now. Obviously it's got a water pump on this, it doesn't rely on thermosiphon. The cap's just fallen down somewhere. It appears to be burping its way through. There aren't any torrents of coolant running out of anywhere yet, given that I've replaced these hoses, the hose down there, the hose down there, and this one here. It's always a bit of a voyage of discovery when you've had all the cooling system apart. And obviously I don't know what state the radiator's in either. That's not been tested at all yet, and I can't test the temperature because of the fan. And I can't put my hand on the front because of the grill. And it's burping itself, it's bleeding itself at the moment, so that's quite handy. So that's definitely warming up now. Tick over's a little bit quick, but never mind. Oil pressure's holding up. Give it a little rev. A few revs will help it bleed as well. over's a bit slower now. I've given it a rev, but that's better. That's about where it should be, as long as it keeps going. Oil pressure's okay. Water temperature is in the mid-70s, so that appears to work. Petrol gauge does something, but whether that's accurate or not I don't know. Ammeter, when you put the lights on, it shows the drain. Tick over's a little bit too slow, I think. So far, right, that level's dropped a little bit now. She sounds reasonably healthy. Just does it so much good to get some heat round, because obviously the valves were sticking before I freed them up. The valves were sticking, so everything will just benefit from getting oil round, heat round, the cooling system getting hot coolant around. Everything just benefits from a gentle warm up. I'll keep an eye on this level in here, and I think I'll probably reverse it now and just see if reverse works. I'll just find that radiator cap first. There we go. Don't want to lose that, even though it's only on the drive, so I shouldn't go too far. Let's give reverse a go, if I can find where reverse is, because I've never tried it. Now, I conveniently left the handbook. Right, I'm guessing that's reverse. Across, down, left. Not much in the way of mirrors. I think we're clear of everything. Let's just try going forwards again. There we go. Get her parked up and then let things cool down a bit, and I'll check the levels. Well, the level seems to have settled. Okay, and the radiator's warm, uniformly warm. If it was blocked, then it'd feel cool in parts. It feels quite warm towards the top, quite cool towards the bottom. Bottom hose is warm but not hot. That's hot. That's quite hot. That's quite warm. So the thermostat's opened. Level looks alright. Radiator feels okay. I can't see any leaks even, which is quite remarkable. So I think I'll let things cool off a bit and then I'll try it again. While that's cooling off, I think I will tidy up the interior a bit. It's not been done, like I say, since we picked it up. It's looking a little scruffy. So while I can get all the doors open, we'll just tidy all this up a bit. I think most of these carpets can go, the blue ones, they're not original. But I'll keep one in the front just to protect that Talbot floor mat. But otherwise, I think we can tidy this out a bit now. And that's the, you can see that's the top hose that came off, and that's what happened to it the first time the thermostat opened and hot water went through it. So clearly that was past its best. So let's go and get a bin and a brush and just tidy this out a bit, I think. These rear carpets were installed before someone fitted static front seat belts. So I'm going to have to cut this off with a standing knife. I think that's probably the easiest way of doing it. The carpets underneath are the originals. While they're a bit delicate, they'll probably do for now. These blue things are pretty horrible, so I think they can go. You can certainly tell what the original colour of the carpets was. It's faded off a little bit, but at least the originals are still here. That's the main thing. Let's just give it a quick vac round and just tidy it up a little bit, I think. Well, there we go, that's looking a bit better. Looking a bit threadbare, these sort of over mats if you like, but it's all original. It survived the war, so it'll last a little bit longer, I think. I mean, the rest of it survived in here pretty well as well, apart from the rear window blind looks a bit second hand, but otherwise it's pretty good. These are neat, these little opening side three-quarter windows. See if the other one opens. I've not tried that yet. Surprising, you can see how it's rubbed on the top of there. It's a bit of a poor design. So maybe I won't force the issue because it's not going to do the seat any favours, especially while it's a bit dry, the leather. So, no, just imagine pootling around Brighton in this until the storm clouds of the war took away those little joys. Just attempting a 3-point turn. Steering feels really nice on it actually. Tried the brakes too much, but they do seem to work. Them being mechanical, if they were greased back in the day, they'll still work now. I mean, this car was built right at the end of 1937 and was registered early in January 38 to a lady who lived in a very smart residence not far from Brighton. So she would have been sat here in 1938, probably with nice gloved hands, behind this largely undamaged steering wheel, and would have been driving around the locality in what was for the time a relatively smart car. Like I say, the clutch has got a very long travel to it. It's not too heavy, it has a very long travel and then engages quite smoothly. The steering feels really nice actually. Feels very smooth and well oiled. I haven't really tried the brakes yet, I might try those. The brakes are mechanical fortunately, so if they were greased up back in the day, they should still do something now without seizing too badly. I'm trying to drive through the gate. Let's just try the pedal. And I'm going to try the brakes just to see if there's anything there. Did something. Feel a bit tight. So I've no idea what condition the linings are in. The brakes are there. They work. Obviously they want checking over, but this is why I'm not a big fan of hydraulic brakes on old cars, because they just start leaking and stick and they're just generally horrible if the car's not used regularly, if it hasn't been used for a long time. Hydraulic brakes just don't like sitting around, whereas mechanical brakes you can get away with a lot more. Quick look at the coolant. I've run it a few times now. The level, I'm not sure if you can quite see that, but the level's in there. There's fluid in there. The thermostat's been opened and closed a few times now today. So that all seems fairly okay. Need to tidy this up a little bit. I think the mice have been in here at some point in this previous home. Desmo screen wash. Probably 1950s, 60s. But it can stay because it's all part of it. I think we'll scoop some of this out after a while. I have here an old reflector. Wonder if that was on the back at some point. In fact, it's not overly burdened with reflectors, but this one that I found just now used to mount, if you can just see that, on that bracket there, and it's snapped off. So that used to mount just there and hang down just beneath the bumper. Or it could have been off this side, because that one's disappeared as well. I wonder if that one's in the box on the bulkhead as well. So that's what it would have had, and that's where it would have gone. See if we can find the other one. Maybe it's in that box of goodies in the boot. An old pair of pliers. Thing. I can't see the other one, so maybe it's in that box in the boot. Well, that's everything back on the cover now. Battery's on charge. So I've got this to the point now where, touch wood, it'll start, if I reconnect the fuel up, it'll start off the button and drive in and out. So that's a great place. That's where I wanted to get to with this weekend. So I'm really pleased about that. It seems to run okay. There's no leaks on the radiator or in the rest of the cooling system from what I can tell. It doesn't appear to be using oil. It doesn't appear to be using any coolant. So that's all positive. Don't seem to be any excessive leaks. Just the odd thing here and there, but nothing, hardly anything at all really. It's amazing. It steers well, the brakes seem to work, which I'm quite surprised about. So that's quite a nice stage to get this one to. So I think next I will do a bit more on the Morris, because I started working on this first and then I kind of got dragged into the sorting the Talbot out, because it's such a heavy thing to push that I wanted to get this so that it ran reasonably well off the button, so that if I want to do anything to it I can drive it outside and do it out there, because there's a lot more room for opening doors and things. It's a bit tight in here. So that's a good position to get that one to for the time being. So that'll free me up a little bit to come back onto this one. Now this one runs. There are videos on here showing it running, starting the first start in who knows how many years. And I just want to sort of carry moving this one forward a little bit. I want to drain the fuel off again, because I think there's still some old fuel mixing in with the fuel that I put in a little while back. I'm not entirely convinced about this electric pump, which I dragged back into life reluctantly. So I'd like to just revisit a few of those areas that I looked at a few months ago, and then sort of move things on from there. Maybe start looking at the brakes. So I think that'll do for now for this video, and thanks for watching. Please click like if this sort of thing is of interest to you, and subscribe to the channel. Click the little notifications bell, that way you'll be told when there's future uploads. Please let me know in the comments if pre-war cars are of interest to you. We keep being told that there's no interest or very little interest in pre-war cars, and it's on the wane, so it'd be nice to prove those particular doubters wrong. So yeah, thanks for watching, and more videos soon. Cheers.